Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm David Rice, the founder of Ignite DDS, here as always with my buddy Kevin Henry. Kevin, how are you?
Dave, it's all good here, man. Looking forward to chatting today with an awesome lady, awesome friend, awesome consultant. I guess just awesome person all around. That's Penny Reed. Penny, how are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm fantastic. You know, the sun is shining. I can go places without a mask on.
Good for
Life
you,
is
right?
good.
Well, and let's dive into today's topic because I know obviously we're getting into the second half of the year. There's a lot of things that are getting ready to happen, and one of the things that I think is so important for dental practices is to make sure that the team is on board with what's going on right now and what's to come. And Penny, let's just talk a little bit about some of the attitudes and changes that you've seen happen, with COVID and everything that's gone on and what we're heading into.
Absolutely. So, for those of you that know me, I had been known as the Growing Your Dental Business person. I have a book by that title. And one of the questions that I was asked years ago that really stood out to me by a doctor that, was considering doing some consulting work. And he said, well, how important is it that I have the right team in place before I start working with someone like you? And he said, would I still get the same results? And I said, you've got to have the right team and have those expectations in place, or I don't care what guideline you follow, it's not going to stick. And so what we found through this whole pandemic is when we get squeezed, whatever's inside, Wayne Dyer, I think in one of his talks held up an orange to a young boy and said, if I squeeze this, what's going to come out of it? And the kid looked at him and he's like, orange juice, right? So this has really put a magnifying glass up to if it was difficult to get the team on board prior to a stressful time like this, it's even more so. And even the best of practices have faced things on different levels as far as, and I know we had talked about this a little bit earlier. I'll go ahead and just hit the nail on the head. In some offices, we have team members that don't want to come back to work. Not many from the offices that I work with, but it's popped up for a variety of reasons, right? Some of them are making more with the unemployment stimulus than they would be if they were back at work. So communication is key. And when we think about organizational development, right, I just kind of want to break this down into bite-sized pieces. Whatever it is, we got to define what the expectation is, right? And so if we could have gone back, right, which we can't, but just to say, all right, guys, we're taking a pause here, right? None of us wanted this to happen. We're taking a pause. When we're ready to come back, let's talk about what's most important about coming back. And unfortunately, for most, I don't want to say all, most of the team members that don't want to come back are focused on about this far away from them, right? I mean, we both know the end of July, which unless that's changed, when the additional stimulus runs out, it's going to be here like that, right? What then? So we've got to have more of a long-term focus and really stay in communication with those team members. And as I mentioned before, I would definitely consult with, I do overall practice management consulting. So if you are working with an HR expert, that's who I would default you to if you get in a sticky situation. But basically, if they've been offered their job back, we've got to communicate with them, hey, your job's back. This additional unemployment, it's not available if you decline coming back. And unfortunately, I can't, for those, and I love analogies that have children, if you got a family of 4, right? If you let one kid do something and you tell the other 3 they can't, it's that whole domino effect. So I think the coaching question becomes, all right, let's try to pull ourselves out of this and let's go 90 days out. What's your expectation, Kevin, as far as being involved in the practice? Because this train's leaving the station. And if your response is, hey, I love this team, I want to be on board, is to say, well, then here's what I need for us to have this understanding and for you to see that I can't do this for you and not do it for everybody else. It's not about me we want you here. The door is open. And yet if what you're saying is you're not willing to come back, well, then you can't be here. Right. And at some point later, we might re-interview you for your role. But I think we're going to have a lot of really surprised team members, unfortunately. And I always want to come at things from a positive standpoint, but some of these short-term behaviors are not going to play out, as Dr. Phil would say a little bit later on. How's that working for you? Probably not going to have played out so well.
Yeah.
But I think we also have to listen. So one of the things that's most important as far as managing expectations, if you didn't have regular meetings before, team meetings, so important to have them. And you probably need to have more of them now than you did, more than a huddle. Not that they've got to be an hour, but I think listening, for the most part, if a team member feels listened to, they're more likely to buy in. And really coming up with some shared expectations of what is it that have happen, asking better questions. How can we better support our patients right now?
Yeah.
How can we better support each other? Because usually when we're acting icky, I mean, you guys tell me, if you've ever acted icky before, who are you usually focusing on?
Sure. So
yeah, we're focusing on ourselves. So we want everybody to feel understood. So, I think the listening, and then when people begin to get icky, we've got to have an agreement as a team. And if you don't have a team code of conduct that you've all sat down and said, hey, how are we going to support each other? Well, hey, we'll be on time, right? We'll be prepared. We'll be solution oriented when there's a problem. And I told you guys before, I was going to introduce you to someone that I had never in this format introduced you to. David's going to be like, oh my gosh.
I'm
This
excited.
woman had like 17 cups of coffee, 15 and a half. Okay, you ready?
We're ready.
We have to have an agreement that we're not going to rock the bitter baby. This is the bitter baby.
I don't know if I like
this
the
is
bitter
the bitter.
baby.
I know who is wearing the world's biggest pull-up. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about the bitter baby. The bitter baby will not stay with us the whole time today. But this bitter baby, I know it's frightening, isn't it? So here's what happens when we rock the bitter baby. All right. I'm going to use a non-COVID related example, but rocking the bitter baby is when we're all in the morning huddle, and then, that one team member that comes in late, and we'll just say for this example that it's a hygienist, right? And she's late, like you expect her to not be on time, but she comes rolling in with a blueberry scone in one hand and her venti extra hot caramel macchiato, no whip, in the other. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late, right? And one of the other hygienists, let's say that the three of us are three other hygienists, and we're thinking, of course she's late, right? Well, then we roll through the day, and all of a sudden we look up and it's 4:15. I'm in the operatory with my last patient of the day who had perio. They're scheduled for a prophy. And I'm up to my armpits and goo. And I hear that same hygienist walking, going, okay, well, I'll see you later. I'm like, wait a minute. She's leaving. I'm running behind. I could really use some help. And I begin mentally, this character shows up, right? In my head, instead of paying attention to the patient, I say, you can say bye if you like. I know, it's terrifying. Mentally, that character pops up and it's like, yeah, she always does this.
Yep.
Right? She probably makes more money than I do. I work harder than she does. And we begin to mentally rock the bitter baby, right? So that's just a little example, and we can begin to rock the bitter baby even about that other. Wow, I could come back to work. I'm going to make less money, right? I just want to stay home. Well, how many of? All right, do you guys have days when you want to stay home? David, absolutely. I bet there's days when you want to stay home and jump on the trampoline.
There are some days.
You got some mad trampoline. If I lived closer, I would come over and jump on the trampoline with you. But it's the whole, casting that vision and what's the benefit of us showing up and supporting each other. And I think being honest and saying, look, guys, this is a tough time. We're going to look back and say, this is probably one of the, unless you've had a natural disaster hit your office, probably one of the toughest times that we've ever been through. And some of this, we're making it up as we go, but we can do it together and we can come out better and stronger. And I think celebrate the wins along the way. You know, have a happy hour one night a week, you know, where you're having wine or sparkling cider or what have you, and say, man, look at what we've done. Look at what we've accomplished, and really encouraging the team to share the wins and also share, all right, what are we frustrated about and what can we do to make this better? Because we're in like super suits and hot, you know, in a completely different work environment than what we've been in. And if we just ignore it, it's going to get worse, because we can rock that bitter baby's invisible.
Yeah. Kev, what do you hear?
So anything that hit me with your best shot. Questions, comments?
D-Rice.
So, well, it's interesting. This is like confession time. So, great team member, not so great team member. I have to apologize because so I'm going to put the onus on my shoulder as the dentist leader. If I'm not helping form this culture, and if I allow the team member to roll in late and stroll in and then sneak out early when everyone else is suffering, then that's my fault. And if I let it happen once, shame on the team member. If I let it happen twice, shame on me, dentist, office manager, whomever is the leaders of this team are. So I'll own that one as the dentist, that it's up to me to set the tone and help build the culture. Kevin, what are your thoughts? Like, as a team member, what's up to you?
Well, what's up to me is that whole mission statement and code of conduct that we should have in the practice, because, you know, the first thing, Penny, whenever you brought up the bitter baby, that was a big baby. Let's be honest.
That's big enough to take on a stage. That's what I'm saying. What did you do during the pandemic? I gave me and a artist buddy of mine, she created that. It's terrifying.
Well, and you know, the thing is, the baby can grow too. You know, it can start off as a small baby. And if you're not careful, that bitter baby keeps growing. And as the team member, and hey, let's be honest, you know, Dave, like you were putting some of it on your shoulders, the team members know that they can get away with things, and they keep pushing to get away with things. And that baby keeps growing in the mind of the other team members. So, you know, I think that A, team members have to be responsible, but B, team members also have to realize that if they see that baby growing, that there's got to be some kind of forum, like you talked about with the meeting, Penny, where they can talk about that baby and get it, not where it's being rocked alone, but it's out there in public and we can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, I appreciate you bringing that up, because often we can even rock the bitter. Hey, I've rocked the bitter baby before. My husband and I, when we get on it about something, we'll be at the dinner table and every now and then he'll go, yeah. So, you know, it gets to the point, are you still rocking the bitter baby about that? I'm like, maybe I'll rock it till I go to bed and then I won't rock it tomorrow. But it's the whole unresolved, you know, whether you want to call it conflict or dissatisfaction. And, you know, when in working with offices, I see things two ways. First, as the owner or the owners, you have your expectations, right, that you set forth, right? And I also work with teams to have them create that team code of conduct that says, hey, we agree to support each other. You know, and I throw out some examples. We agree that at the end of the day, that if we do wind up wrapping up early, that we're going to go around and help each other so that we can all get out at a reasonable time. We agree, if we're upset with somebody, to take it to that person. And the bitter baby was actually born in a training meeting where I was kind of trying, you know, use it as an example. I said, you know, when you get bitter and you'll go and you'll sit and kind of, you know, ruminate over this, it's like, it's this bitter baby, and you go sit in the corner and rock it. And it's like, yeah. And then what else did she do? But what's even worse is when we try to hand it to another team member. And that's where, with some of this, whether it's fear or I wasn't happy with my job in the first place, and so I really don't want to come back, and then it can spread like wildfire amongst the team. It's so important, even if there is chaos going on in your culture right now, to sit down and say, okay, let's set, we know that some of this stuff's out there. Let's set that aside. And I love to use other examples. So what's the current playlist in the office, like on iTunes? And we'll make a list, Highway to Hell. I can't get no satisfaction. They'll come up, well, what do we want it to be? And really try to make it a little bit more fun, but then think about, okay, guys, what kind of work environment do we want to have? Those same things, those standards, whether we're in the midst of a crisis or not in a crisis, the crisis is when we need it the most. But to have a way that my clients and folks that have come to my meetings, they're like, man, we want a bitter baby. So the next goal is, I've got a little one that I think we're going to, 3D scan. Gosh, Kevin, are you still upset about that? To go, hey, Kevin, are you rocking the bitter baby about that?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Or to show up and go, okay, I'd like to acknowledge I've been doing it. I had that thing strapped in the seat next to me in the car, talking to it the whole way home. And I'm not proud of myself, but I did it. And I'm recommitting because I'm better than that. That's not how I want to show up.
I like it.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we, as we look toward the second half of the year and what we want our dental practice to look like, that, Dave, you and I have talked about systems, and we've talked about so many other things, but it also comes back to that mental attitude and that mental mindset that you're bringing in. And I love the playlist idea as well, because I think whatever we bring into the practice that day, it may be the baby, it may be the mindset, whatever it is, but it's going to reflect the rest of the time. And if the practice is going to be successful, it's got to start with what we bring into it individually, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and years ago, when I left as an office manager to become a consultant, I really thought what I would, the most impact that I would have with teams, the systems, right? And then I realized those don't stick without the right, if we keep feeling like we're spinning our wheels, or we're tired, or we talk about things and they don't happen, yet certainly there are better systems out there than others. I mean, no doubt about it. But what it comes down to is, that closing that distance between this is what we want to do and getting it implemented. It's all culture. And we did last year, a year ago in May, which I was really grateful that it was last year and not this year, an event called Unleash the Magic of Culture at Walt Disney World. And we included a Disney Institute Business Behind the Magic tour. So we got to go behind the scenes in several different environments. And some of the takeaways that we got from that were they over communicate things, right? I mean, they have things, they talk to them about it. They have things on the wall. In their laundry facility that we were in, the managers are out on the floor. They're having multiple meetings a day. So often we think, well, I told them that. It's like, hey, David, didn't we talk about that 2 months ago? Let's pull the meeting notes back up. Well, if it's really important, then it is shared and overshared, and it's shared in multiple platforms. And hopefully I won't get in trouble for talking about this, but regardless of your religion, let's say most of us have seen the movie The Ten Commandments, right? So whether you follow the Christian Bible, you probably have heard of Moses coming down the mountain with 10 commandments. Well, there's a reason that there were only 10, right? If there were 752, everybody can't remember those. So we need a clear and concise list of those primary expectations, and then they've got to be hung, I'm not necessarily saying on the website, but on the internal part, they've got to be hung on the wall, something that we go over and then say, hey guys, how are we doing? How are we doing with these? And again, having that honest dialogue. But going back to the other, and I hate to lose team members. I really do. I want to think that everybody can be safe. Some people are just committed to talking about the playlist. They're committed to doing a song that nobody wants to listen to, right? Yep. And they may need to be on another team.
Yep.
Really
Makes
agree.
sense, man.
Yeah. So
Great.
I'll tell you, what I kind of tying it all up. What comes to mind is we've encouraged all of you who are watching to work really hard on strategy for the last couple of months, and your strategy to communicate with patients and communicate with all of us as a team together, your strategy to reopen. But Peter Drucker is one of my favorite guys out there, and he shares something very poignant, and that's culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you have a great culture, then the strategy works. And if you don't have a great culture, then all the strategy in the world falls apart in short order, and you know it if you're living it. So work on that strategy. Penny, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Sorry if I frightened you with the bitter baby.
Kev, you want to take us home?
Hey, absolutely. Penny, thank you so much. We're going to put the information down below where you can reach Penny, learn more about what she does, and maybe have that bitter baby get out of your practice. Who knows?
There you go. All right. Thank you guys so much for having me. It was fun.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Together, we rise.
Cheers.